Good morning, Connection. I had the urge this morning to say, Good morning, Vietnam. Does anybody remember that movie with Robin Williams? Good morning, Connection. Pastor DE is in class this morning, so we will begin with our morning blessing. Spirit of truth, we thank you for this new day in which we are filled with gratitude. We are grateful for another day to live out our lives in freedom, in happiness, and in joy. We give thanks to you for both the tangible and intangible daily bread that you provide for us. We live and move and have our being in the perfect, unconditional love that lives in our heart. We are grateful now for that which we have already received, and are grateful in advance for more than we can ask or think coming into our lives on a daily basis. We commit ourselves today and every day this year to get happy, stay happy, and be happy, and see what happens. In the name and nature of the Christ. Amen. And so it is. Okay, on to our quotes. The first one, always be your truth. Anything else is a lie. Fiona Hutton. Next, as we embrace and celebrate the abundance, health, and wealth in others, we allow ourselves to break free from the lie that there is not enough good to go around. Michael Beckwith. Next, darkness and light are both of one nature, different only in seeming, for each arose from the source of all. Hermes Trismegistus. We spoke about him several years ago. He's an ancient, wise man. And basically what he's saying is what we talk about all the time. Everything comes from the void. All right. Next, without continual growth and progress, such words as improvement, achievement, and success have no meaning. Benjamin Franklin. Then Albert Einstein, we have a quote from him. Failure is success in progress. And lastly, the key to success is to focus on goals, not on obstacles. And there was no name attached to that one, just a website called success.com. Okay, we're going to talk today about success, which is a huge topic. As I've said before, everyone has to define success for him or herself. And because of that, there are as many definitions of it as there are people. Here in the West, when we hear that word, success, unfortunately, most of us immediately think of it in terms of material wealth, how much money you make or have in the bank, what type of car you drive, the size of your house, or what zip code, what neighborhood it's in, or how many degrees you have hanging on your wall. So that's certainly one way to define success, but more and more, even here in America, which I think is probably the most materialistic country in the world, some would say especially here in America, we are increasingly coming to understand that success on that level is empty and meaningless if that's the only way you choose to measure it. So many celebrities and CEOs, after making it to the top, they fall apart. They have some sort of breakdown, and after the fact, so many times you'll see them interviewed, and they all seem to have the same story. All the dreams I had came true. I got everything I ever wanted, or I had access to everything I could ever want. I achieved everything I set out to achieve. But when I got there, when I did those things, it wasn't like I thought it would be. It didn't make me feel the way I thought it would make me feel, because inside I was still the same old me. And then some of them go on to define that as insecure, jealous, codependent, addicted, lonely, any number of these things that they were before they became successful. So material success means nothing if you've done no work on yourself along the way and haven't been successful on the inside. So let's get right to it. I came across some notes in an old notebook of mine yesterday, and I don't know if they were from a book of this same title or if this was just a part of a bigger book, but my notes were titled The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success, and they're by Deepak Chopra. So I wanted to give proper credit to him. No matter how you define what success actually means to you, these 7 laws that Deepak Chopra presents here will help you achieve it. And once you define what it is, there are many different ways to get there. But we're going to take a look at these 7 laws today that he suggests, because I personally believe, doesn't mean you have to agree with me, but I personally believe that he outlines here one of the clearest and most effective paths to success in any area that I've ever heard or read about. And as with so many things, all these things are simple, but they're not easy. There's a particular pattern he follows with each of these 7 laws that I will also follow as well. And, I'll always, as I always do, I will also add my own commentary. He begins with a quote, and then he states what the law is, and then he'll give several principles associated with the law. So, the quote for law number 1 is, "In the beginning, there was neither existence nor non-existence. All this world was manifest energy." And that is from Hymn of Creation from the Rig Veda. So, what he's saying basically, again, like we talk about all the time, everything began as pure potential, as pure energy, formless, faceless, and nameless, like we talked about last week, the way it is in the void. So here's the first law, the law of pure potentiality. And the first principle associated with that law is, he says, take time each day to be silent, to connect with your spirit, to just be. Okay, why? Because that's where and when you are closest to the void, to that place of pure potential of everything. And so it would make sense, if you want to create your day, you must begin it spending some time where everything is born and created, which is the void, which is where you get to when you are in silence. Okay, next principle, practice non-judgment. Begin each day with the statement, "Today I shall judge nothing that occurs." Wow. Okay, again, simple, not easy. And throughout the day, remind yourself of that statement each time you catch yourself judging. All right, so there's no good. That means you go through your day not labeling anything as good or bad, just having experiences. There is such freedom in that. We talked a few weeks ago about, I read a piece to you by a man named Michael Singer, and that's what he was talking about. It was a piece of his called The Time You Have Between Birth and Death. And he said, once you get free of labels, of labeling things, then that's true freedom, because then you just experience life as it is, and you get to decide how you're going to interpret everything. Okay, next, commune with nature. Silently observe the intelligence within everything. Watch a sunset. Listen to the sound of the ocean, or simply smell the scent of a flower. All right, now, an example of this would be what he's talking about here is the seasons. Not one of us that is alive here on earth has to go out and say, it is March 1st. It is time for spring to start, and we don't decide when the flowers begin to bloom. We don't decide in the autumn when the leaves start to fall and everything dies. Nature takes care of that itself by the natural laws that is set up. Same thing, our bodies. We don't have to consciously think about in the morning, okay, breathe. I got to remember how to breathe. Okay, heart, beat, all your systems do your thing. I think I remember I said in a teaching one time about when you're pregnant as a woman, you don't have to sit at the kitchen table and every day, it is my intention today to create my child's lungs. It's like, it just does it. It doesn't, nature does it on its own, because that's how nature was set up. So, it's like that part in the Bible in Job where it says, "Where were you, Job, when I hung the stars in space?" So basically, what he's saying here is, if nature as set up by universal laws, can handle all of that I've just talked about on its own, then nature can handle your day for you. Okay, you don't really have to work that. You don't have to decide. Just go out into nature, become a part of nature, connect with nature, commune with nature, and you'll see how much more easily your day will go because you become a part of nature as you were created to be. Okay, so that all was law number 1, the law of pure potentiality. Law number 2, the law of giving and receiving. And here's the quote: "Thy infinite gifts come to me only on those very small hands of mine. Ages pass, and still thou pourest, and still there is room to fill." And that is by, I never get this man's name right, Rabindranath Tagore. Okay, so I think he is a monk. So there was 2 ideas in that quote that kind of hit me. Number 1 is that God is inside us. The first part of that quote says, "Thy infinite gifts come to me only on those very small hands of mine." Everything that you get, first of all, it comes through your own hands, and you have to have your hands open to receive it. Secondly, the second idea in that quote is we are just an open channel for God's energy to flow through. It says, "Ages pass, and still thou," or you pour, thou pourest, "and still there is room to fill." Well, if you're not an open channel, if the universe keeps filling, it's if you're not giving anything back out, it gets full, and the universe says, "Oh, they don't need anything else." So in order to keep that abundance flowing, you have to be an open channel, like we have talked about over and over. So here are the principles associated with this law. Give a gift to everyone you encounter, be it a compliment, a flower, or a prayer. This will begin the process of circulating joy and affluence in your life and in the lives of others. So again, this idea of abundance being linked with being an open channel for the abundance of God to flow through you. My brother talks a lot about you take a breath, but what happens if you don't give that breath back? You die. Okay, so you've got to give as much as you're receiving in order to stay alive and to keep the abundance flowing. Okay, next, gratefully receive every gift that life offers you. Be open to receiving, whether it be a material gift from others, a compliment, or a prayer. And I would add, learn to value these things all the same. Because, as we talked about just a few minutes ago about people who basically have everything they want, those people are the people who truly understand that there are just some things money cannot buy. So when somebody gives you a gift, whether it's their time or their love or whatever, don't only look at material things as gifts. Look at everything you receive from others as a gift. All right, next, silently wish everyone you encounter happiness, joy, and laughter. By giving and receiving the gifts of caring, affection, appreciation, and love, you will keep the wealth circulating in your life. Okay, if all of us would practice just this one principle alone, the entire world would change within 30 days. I'm going to read it again. Silently wish everyone you encounter happiness, joy, and laughter. By giving and receiving the gifts of caring, affection, appreciation, and love, you will keep the wealth circulating in your life. All right, so that was law number 2, the law of giving and receiving. Law number 3, the law of karma, or cause and effect. Here's the quote: "Karma is the eternal assertion of human freedom. Our thoughts, our words, and deeds are the threads of the net which we throw around ourselves." All right, so this is this idea of the net, of this creating a net. There's 2 perspectives you can look at it. Depending on our thoughts, our words, and our deeds, we create for ourselves either a net which we can look at as a prison that we're caught in, that we can't get out of. Sometimes our words and our thoughts and our deeds create a net that we can't get out of. But you could also look at it from the different perspective. Your words, thoughts, and deeds can provide for you a safety net. You know, when you're people on a trapeze, you know, or somewhere high, washing windows or whatever, a lot of times they'll put a net below them. So just in case they fall, that is their safety net. They will not hit the ground as hard at all or as hard as they would because of the safety net. So we have these two ways of looking at it. There are two ways we can create with our thoughts, words, and deeds. Next principle, witness the choices you make in every moment. The best way to prepare for any moment in the future is to be fully conscious in the present. Okay, so we talk about that a lot. That needs no explanation. Next principle, whenever you make a choice, ask yourself two questions. What are the consequences of this choice? And will this choice bring happiness to me and to those who are affected by this choice? So we talked a few weeks ago about asking this question. Will this decision support the life I'm trying to create? All right? So ask yourself all those questions before you make a choice. Before you have a word or a thought or a deed, ask yourself, how's this going to affect me? How's this going to affect the others around me? Is it going to bring me happiness? Is it going to bring them happiness? Is this going to support the life I want to create? So those are all good principles to think about because this law of cause and effect is real. Karma comes back. Next principle, ask your heart for guidance. Notice, I love this. It doesn't say ask your head, doesn't say ask your mind. Ask your heart for guidance and be guided by its message of comfort or discomfort. If the choice feels comfortable, go ahead with that choice. If the choice feels uncomfortable, then don't make that choice. Okay, so this is a lot like I talked about. Dr. Kim Duramo has something she calls the heavy and light game. And she says if it feels light, that's always the truth. If it feels heavy, that's a lie. Now, one thing I would say about this, doesn't always mean that when you feel sometimes you feel light about a choice feels light to you. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy to do. It may be a hard thing you got to do, but the feeling you have when you think about making that choice is, yeah, that's the right thing to do. So you can, I'm not saying that, because I think it throws us off a little bit when it says, if the choice feels comfortable, go ahead, and if it doesn't, then don't. It doesn't mean you're always going to be in your comfort zone and you're never going to have to do anything that is uncomfortable to you. It just means the actual choice itself will feel comfortable to you or not. Sometimes you just can't live with certain choices. Okay. Law number 4. Here's the quote. An integral, or that's another word for integrated, which means someone who has become whole. An integral being knows without going, sees without looking, and accomplishes without doing. Lao Tzu. So this law is the law of least effort. For those of you who have ever spent any time listening to Esther Hicks, this is what she often talks about as the path of least resistance. This law is based on the fact that nature's intelligence functions with effortless ease, with carefreeness, harmony, and love. I'm going to read that again. This law, the law of least effort, is based on the fact that nature's intelligence functions with effortless ease, with carefreeness, harmony, and love. So we talked about this just a minute ago. Nature doesn't really need our help. And what it needs for us to do sometimes is just stay out of its way and let it do what it's going to do. The law of least effort assures us that there is always a simple, natural path to fulfillment. Again, simple and easy are not the same things. So next, accept people, circumstances, and events as they are in this moment. When confronted with any challenge, remind yourself, this moment is as it should be because the entire universe is as it should be. Now we're getting into some Eckhart Tolle territory. As always, or as much as possible, stay in the present moment and don't judge it or label it as good or bad. We talked a few weeks ago about the fact that every experience you have expands you or makes you greater in some way because it makes you bigger or gives you more knowledge, information than you had before you had that experience. So Every experience can be positive for you if you receive it that way, and therefore every experience has value. Next principle, take responsibility for your situation without blaming anything or anyone, including yourself. Every problem is an opportunity to take this moment and transform it into a greater benefit, which is what we just talked about. Okay, next principle, relinquish the need to defend your point of view. In defenselessness, you remain open to all points of view, not rigidly attached to one of them. All right, so two things that came to my mind here are, number one, don't listen in order to respond. Listen in order to understand. If all you're listening to somebody else for is so that you can wait till they finish and then poke holes in their argument, you might as well not even have the conversation at all. It's wasted time and energy. Number two, something Dr. Wayne Dyer always said, and it's really as simple as sometimes, do you want to be right? Or do you want to be happy? Okay? Do you want to win the argument, or do you want to have peace and harmony? And that doesn't mean that you always have to give up your values or be oppressed by another person. It just means that you have to be open to compromising. And I would say if you're not open to compromising, then you can just walk away. Sometimes there's great peace in just walking away, but that's where the peace is. The peace is not in standing there arguing and only listening to them in order to poke a hole in their argument. If that's what you're going to do, you might as well just walk away right then, because that's where you're going to find the peace. You're not going to find the peace keeping on arguing if you know going in you're not going to compromise. Okay, so that's all of law number 4, the law of least effort. Law number 5, the law of intention and desire. Here's the quote. In the beginning, there was desire, which was the first seed of mind. That comes also from Hymn of Creation from the Rig Veda. It says you can get results through effort, but if you follow these 5 steps in the law of intention and desire, your intention will generate its own power. Now, this goes against pretty much everything we've been taught by our Western, patriarchal, overly masculine culture, like things like play hurt, you just suffer through it, you compete rather than, it's better to compete than cooperate, you have to, everything's really hard, you got to work hard all the time. I'm not saying you don't ever have to work hard, but not always. So, these ideas that he sets forth, these 5 steps, are the complete antithesis of that. Number 1, center yourself in the silent space between thoughts in the essential state of being. So that's the first place. You got to center yourself and get connected to your source. Number 2, release your intentions and desires with the expectations that they will bloom when the season is right. All right? So there we go. It says you can have desires and intentions. Let them go. Make them known. But that second part, with the expectation that they will bloom when the time is right. The greatest gardener on the face of the earth can't make a flower grow any faster than it's going to grow. And sometimes there's just seasons. And yeah, what you ask for, sure, ask and believe that it is given to you right then in the spirit realm, but in manifestation, it may not be the right season and you may have to wait a little bit. All right, number 3. This one's an interesting one. I've heard other people say this and I never really understood it, but it makes sense the way he says it. Keep your desires to yourself. Do not share them with anyone else unless they are closely bonded with you. Now, why? To my understanding, I guess because if you share your desire with someone and they're not supportive or they don't agree with you or then they make you question. They make you question yourself. They make you doubt yourself. And that leads you to get out of your heart and back into your mind. So I would say that would probably be the reason not to share a desire with someone unless you're pretty closely bonded with them, because you don't, at that stage of it, when you're just planting the seed of it, you don't want anybody getting your intention off. You don't want doubt to come in. Okay, number 4, relinquish your attachment to the outcome. That's a tough one. Tough, 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 tough. But sometimes you do. You just have to say, this is what I want. But if not, then I trust that the universe has my higher good in mind, and that was not what I needed. You know, that old song, thank God. Sometimes I thank God for unanswered prayers. Sometimes you think you really, really want something and you don't get it. And later on down the road, you're like, oh, yeah, thank you, God, for letting me dodge that bullet. All right. And number 5, let the universe handle the details. Now, this is a lot like the concept that we've talked about before of subconsciousing, okay? So you get what you want in your mind, possibly right before you go to sleep, and then you ask Spirit, Source, God, your higher self, you say, attend to this for me. And you just let them, and you believe it will be done, okay? So, and we had a whole teaching on that if you want to go back and talk about it. But I have personally practiced that before, and it actually does work, because the principle it's based on is that you have so much information in your subconscious that you've taken in over the years that you can't possibly keep at the forefront of your mind. But when that statement that we make, that everything you need, all your answers are inside you, that's true. But sometimes you just can't go through all the millions of file cabinets where you have filed away all of the information you need. But if you make it like, hey, I know the answer's in there somewhere, and you just ask Spirit, hey, attend to this for me. 9 times out of 10 when you wake up, and I've said that before too. I've gone to bed before saying, in the morning I'll know what to do, and pretty much I do. All right, so those were the 5 steps. And next he lists some further ideas about how to go about these 5 steps practically and logistically. He says, make a list of your intentions and desires, and look at this list before you go into silence, or before you meditate, before you go to sleep at night, and when you wake up in the morning. So that's just keeping it right in front of your face, in the front of your mind. Next, release your desires to the field of pure potentiality. Remember, we talked last week about send it back to the void. If it came out a way you don't want, send it back in there and let it be recreated. Trusting it, the void, to handle all the details for you. Know that when things don't seem to go your way, there is a reason. Okay, I like the way that Andrew Martin explains this. He says, when events don't make sense to you from your human level of understanding or from the human perspective, know that it's your higher self that's moving the pieces around the chessboard from its higher perspective of the big picture. Okay, he also talks about, years ago, I did a teaching where I quoted from him, and he talked about your higher self being like the lifeguard in the pool. And so, lifeguards are always up on that chair. Why? Because they're seeing from a higher perspective. They see things that the people down on the level of the pool can't see. So when something happens, when an event occurs and you don't understand it down from that level of your everyday life in the pool, just know that if you are connected to your higher self, if you have asked your higher self for help, then whatever's happening, it sees more than you do, a bigger picture, and it's moving the pieces around ultimately for your good. All right, next, practice present moment awareness in all your actions. Refuse to allow obstacles to consume your attention in the present moment. All right, so again, every one of these is reminding me of something we've talked about before. Esther Hicks says, energy flows where your focus goes. All right. So why would you ever focus on a reality you don't want? All right. If your energy flows where your focus is, why would you be focusing constantly on something you don't want? That's just giving it more energy. Why would you ever focus on the obstacle or the problem? If you can't give, and I like this part too, because we're not perfect. I'm not perfect, certainly. And she says something, if you can't get positive about it, then just shift into neutral. It's like, if you're in a negative place, sometimes it's not possible for you to get all the way to positive, but you can just shift into neutral and say, you know what? I don't have a solution, but let me tell you what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to focus all my energy over here on the problem anymore. I'm just going to go look at something else for a while and shift into neutral and let the positivity come. All right, so that was law number 5. Law number 6, the law of detachment. And here's the quote. The ego and the self dwell in the same body. The former eats the sweet and sour fruits of the tree of life, while the latter looks on in detachment. Mundaka Upanishad. Now, far be it from me to make a correction, but I'm going to. I would replace the term tree of life that this person used here to the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, because I think that's more what he's talking about. That's the intention he's trying to convey. The ego lives in duality, and that's what the tree of the knowledge of good and evil represents, the duality of good and bad, and we always are judging and choosing between the two, the sweet and the sour, the good and the bad. The true self, which it says later on in the quote, is the observer. Okay, what do we always say? I am not my thoughts. I'm not even the thinker of thoughts. I am the spirit capable of observing myself thinking the thoughts. So that's what I think this quote is talking about. The principles. The way to acquire anything in the universe is to relinquish our attachment to it. Now, that's one of those great paradoxes that the Bible is full of, such as he that loses his life for my sake will find it. The greatest in the kingdom will be the servant of all. The first shall be last, and the last shall be first. So that's just one of those paradoxes that seems like the opposite. The way to acquire, to get anything in the universe is to relinquish our attachment to it. You know, there's that old saying from the 70s that teenage girls always like to write in their diaries, if you love something, set it free. If it comes back to you, it's yours forever. If it doesn't, it never was. Same idea. All right. The search for security is actually an attachment to certainty. I love that. The search for security is actually an attachment to certainty, to the known. And the known is the prison of our past conditioning. Freedom from our past lies in the wisdom of uncertainty. All right, so my brother wrote an entire book about that. It's the wisdom of saying, I don't know. Without uncertainty, life is just the repetition of outworn memories. There's no evolution in that. And when there is no evolution, there is stagnation, entropy, and decay. Whew, okay, so what they're saying is, so if you never want to be uncertain, then you're never going to grow. So you're just going to stay where you are and die. Andrew Martin, again, I quote from him a lot. He has this idea that, sure, it's more stable to stand on two legs, to have both of your feet on the ground. That's the most stable position you can be in. But you can't move forward with both feet on the ground. At some point, you got to pick one foot up, which means you got to balance for however long on that one leg in order to take a step forward. So that's just part of the game. In order to grow, you momentarily have to be put off balance a little bit. He continues, in ancient wisdom traditions, the solution to this dilemma lies in our willingness to detach from the known, step into the unknown, and surrender our desires to the creative mind that orchestrates the dance of the universe. Again, nature doesn't need your help. It is perfect. It will work it out for you if you will get out of its way. The unknown is the field of all possibilities, ever fresh, ever new, always open to the creation of new manifestations. The field can orchestrate an infinity of space-time events to bring about the outcome intended. But when our intention gets locked into a rigid mindset, we lose the fluidity, flexibility, and creativity inherent in the field. All right, so as we've talked about many times, the solution may look nothing like you expect it to. And if you're locked into that expectation of how it's supposed to look, then you might miss the solution altogether. Okay? So I'm going to read you now a story about that. A quick little story. A lot of you may have heard it before, but just listen to this because it perfectly illustrates this point that's trying to be made. Here's the story. There once was a man who lived in a 2-story house. The house was near a river, and unfortunately, the river began to flood. As the river rose, warnings were given via radio, TV, and shortwave. Large jeeps drove through the area to help evacuate people. As a jeep drove by the man's house, he was told, "You are in danger. Your life is at stake. You must evaluate. Get into the Jeep and let us take you to safety." "No," the man replied from his doorstep. "I have faith. I will be okay. The flood won't get me. God will take care of me." The water continued to rise. Soon the first floor of the man's house was underwater, so he climbed to the second floor. He looked out his window and saw a boat floating down his street. When it passed his house, the rescuer paddling the boat made every effort to convince the man to take action so that his life would be saved. "You're in danger," he called out over a bullhorn. "You will drown in the flood if you don't come get in the boat with me and let me take you to safety." "No worries," replied the man. "I have faith. Everything's okay. Even though the flood is rising, I will be fine. God will take care of me." The river continued to rise. The man then had to climb onto his roof to avoid the water. A helicopter pilot sees him on top of his house and hovers above him, dropping down a rope ladder and motioning for him to climb up. The man looks up and waves him off, yelling, "I'll be fine. I have faith that God will take care of me." The flood finally covers the house completely, and the man drowns. At the pearly gates, the man says to God, "I had faith in you. Why did you let me die?" To which God replies, "I sent you a Jeep, I sent you a boat, and I sent you a helicopter. What more could I have done for you?" All right, so, point made. The solution doesn't always look exactly like we want it or expect it to, but when it comes, you got to take it. All right. So, the other principles for this law are practice detached involvement. Stay alert, listen when the Jeep comes by and the boat and the helicopter, to the opportunity within every problem by letting go of your idea of how things should be. Accept uncertainty as an essential part of your experience. In your willingness to accept uncertainty, solutions will spontaneously appear. Remain open to all possibilities and enjoy every moment in the journey of your life. All the fun, mystery, and magic in the field of pure potentiality. All right, so this one has a quote at the end as well as at the beginning, and this quote says, "Manifest the divinity within you, and everything will be harmoniously arranged around it." And that is by Swami Vivekananda. All right. Here we are at our seventh and last law, the law of Dharma, that's spelled D-H-A-R-M-A, or what that means is your purpose in life. The quote says, "To work with love is to weave the cloth with threads drawn from your heart, even as if your beloved were to wear that cloth." Khalil Gibran. All right, so here are the principles. Nurture the divinity within you, the spirit animating your body and mind by carrying the consciousness of timeless being in the midst of time-bound experience. All right, so that was a lot of words. Let me break it down for you the way Jesus said it. Be in this world, but not of it. Okay, it says, carry in your body the consciousness of timeless being in the middle of this time-bound experience. Next, make a list of your unique talents. Then list all the things that you love to do while expressing these talents. Ask yourself daily, and I'm assuming it's in relationship to these things you love to do, how can I help? How can your talents, your skills, the things you love to do anyway, how can they help? How can I help? How can I serve? The answers to these questions will help you serve your fellow human beings with love. And when you do that, because we are all connected, because we are all one, when you help and serve your fellow man with love, you are also helping and serving yourself. And that, in my opinion, is the meaning of true success. Amen? Amen. All right. Do I have some? Okay, Benny has sent me some people to read your names. Thank you so much for being here today. I hope you enjoyed that. I came across that yesterday and I thought, this is such good stuff. I'm just going to teach on this tomorrow. All right. So, Reverend David Michael, hello, hello. Pastor Gloria Harris, Kisa Walker Heron, Laverne Bryant, Jonathan Ford Turnbull, Jennifer Johnson, Callie Gozier, Doreen Panton, Lovey Hobbs, Alita Brown, Elaine Jeffries, Pastor Don, my daddy, Leslie Harmon, Sheila Warner, and Pastor Lonnie Holloway, the father, the godfather of Get Happy and See What Happens. Okay, join us tomorrow night for our continuing series on Stillness Speaks at 7 p.m., and we will see you again on Sunday. I love you. Goodbye.